There is a bizarre political situation unfolding in France. Parliamentary elections were held close to 2 months ago, and there is still no new government in place. And it is because the president, Emmanuel Macron, first stalled by declaring some kind of political truce during the Olympics. Now the Olympics are over, and there is still no government in place because Macron is stalling again. The Prime Minister of the outgoing cabinet and his entire Council of Ministers resigned right after the result, but they were asked to continue to manage day-to-day affairs. There is something called regime of ordinary affairs in France, where a resigning cabinet just does the routine matters, but this has been the longest such regime ever in France, and the resigned cabinet is now working on next year's budget. Now, normally, ministers are not supposed to vote in parliament while they are part of an outgoing cabinet. The outgoing ministers had tendered their resignation and they were sworn in to the new parliament and voted in the assembly leadership elections that happened in July. But a month later, they are still serving in the outgoing cabinet. The Left Party's coalition, led by the party called France Unbowed, has got the maximum number of seats, followed by the Socialists. But Macron has simply made it clear that he's not going to entertain the prospect of installing a left-wing government in office. This exceptional situation reveals one of the big weaknesses of the current French system, and that is none of these institutions are designed to run like a parliamentary system. Therefore, presidents have inordinate control. But when push comes to shove, really, they don't be presidential in their approach to government. So basically, Macron's efforts are a non-legal way of controlling the government, even though his party, the Renaissance Party, lost a third of its seats in the elections. The front-runner to be the next Prime Minister is the 37-year-old Lucie Castets. The first thing that she intends to do as France's next Prime Minister is to reduce the age of retirement down to 62. Then she's going to pour more money into healthcare and education, both of which are creaking. And to pay for that, at least some of that money will have to be in the form of taxes on the ultra-rich. Lucie Castets has been voted as the candidate of choice of the left-wing coalition, which won the maximum number of seats. She has still not been invited to form the next government, and the one person who has the power to give her that job, President Emmanuel Macron, has simply shown no signs of relenting. So, net-net, we are in somewhat of a Kafkaesque situation, a surreal situation, where a candidate for the post of Prime Minister is campaigning for a job that she's not likely to get. Almost 7 weeks since those elections ended in deadlock in Parliament, neither left nor right nor centre is winning a majority in the French elections. France is in a bit of a political quagmire. Since then, Macron has not been in any hurry to pick a new Prime Minister whose job it is to run the country. He called for a political truce during the Olympics, and it continues into the summer dog days of August. Now, in those summer days is when most of the French go off on vacation. Many of them even announce it on their front doors. Last week, Macron began a host of meetings with political leaders to try and help inform his choice for who will be the next Prime Minister. In the past, choosing a Prime Minister was a much easier task. Macron simply picked candidates from his own winning coalition and then expected them to govern with him. But since his coalition took a drubbing in the election and lost more than 80 seats in Parliament, that option is no longer on the table. So tradition would mean that he would offer the choice of Prime Minister to the winning party. This time, no single party has a clear majority, unlike in the past. So the president's plan is to pick the person who could shore up the most political support and therefore run the most stable government possible. Macron's analysis of the election result, and he told this to citizens in an open letter last month, is that voters were demanding a new conciliatory style of politics and a conciliatory style of power sharing, which is something that is unknown to French political culture. The leaders of the 4 left-wing parties which banded together and formed a coalition called the New Popular Front say that someone from their group should be given the job because they won the maximum number of seats. But many of the actions of the coalition have run afoul of the nation's big businesses. Macron's philosophy is to make France more business-friendly, and he says that the left will overturn one of his signature moves, which was to raise the age of retirement. So after arguing for more than 2 weeks over who they would put forward as their prime ministerial candidate, the left-wing coalition finally settled on Lucie Castets. She was plucked out of relative political obscurity. She was running the finance department in Paris City Hall before she got the call for the top job. The request, which came over a telephone call while Castets was biking, was a shock to even her. She has never ever run for public office, let alone holding a public office. And now she has the topmost job in France. She left the Socialist Party many years ago and since then has not been an active member of any party. She's a lifelong civil servant who's been doing something that has never been seen before, which is actively campaign for the job of Prime Minister. She's been introducing herself to fellow citizens, both in person and through the media. She calls herself a lesbian married mother of a 2-year-old. She's a graduate from the country's top college for civil servants. She loves to be outdoorsy. She's been fielding interviews. She sent letters to parliamentarians, which are co-signed by leaders of the parties, laying out what the plans of her next government are going to be. Over the weeks, she has softened her position from the original hardcore stand that her government would follow through on the entire left-wing coalition program. Now she says she's going to pursue something more reflective of a minority government. Her government's focus would be on goals which she believes could find wider audience and wider agreement, including increasing the minimum wage, making the economy more environmentally friendly, and investing in public services. Still, Lucie Castets faces an uphill battle, and not just because she's an unknown and politically inexperienced entity. The biggest party in her coalition, France Unbowed, has a history of scorched earth politics. Many in France, including in Macron's outgoing government, consider France Unbowed and its combative leader Jean-Luc Mélenchon to be dangerous to French democracy. Interestingly, they hold the same view of the far-right leader Marine Le Pen. If President Macron does not pick someone from the left or somebody from the centre who can gather more votes than the New Popular Front, then the message to French citizens would be scathing. That Emmanuel Macron did what he pleased and he couldn't care less about the election results. Macron's term gets over in 2027, and as per the country's constitution, he cannot run for office again. While the constitution does not lay down rules on who the president should name as prime minister or by when he should do that, there is an internal deadline that's looming. Normally, the government must introduce its budget by early October so that Parliament can pass it by the end of the year. It would be catastrophic for Emmanuel Macron if by January 1, 2025, the French Parliament was unable to adopt a budget. France's image, too, would take a serious bruising in the international financial markets, one that it can ill afford at a sensitive time such as this.